Rick, we are live on your StreamYard account through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I thank you for, you know, we're here in the studio just before our podcast, my podcast show, Capital Fit. But we're really here to talk about what I'm seeing a lot on Instagram is all this, um, these reels and videos about cholesterol, glucose, fats, fasting, getting to a state of autophagy. And I'm hearing it from all these supposedly experts. And what I'm not seeing is them quoting you because of your book, Sugar Crush, you published 9 years ago, talks about all of this. I mean, I can go to specific pages and reference that page with what they're claiming uh, in Instagram and other social media. But why are people not quoting you, Rick?
I don't know. It could be the book came out before this discussion, which is very current now, and it was published before COVID. I think that was a big factor because when I was talking about these subjects before COVID, like what's he talking about? Why is he so concerned about this? Well, this is what I do. In 1981, I went to Taipei at the behest of Dr. Lu, asking the question, why did they have diabetes? That was 1981. So I thought I answered the question back then, which I did.
Wow.
The answer is sugar. But I think the conversation has been interpolated by all these, like you say, experts. Well, they're well-meaning, but they're getting pieces of the puzzle. They don't go into the history. Now, I've been around a long time. I've been looking at this for a long time. So recently, that question came up today when you were talking about the viruses. Well, on page 25 of my book, Sugar Crush, I talked about the biochemistry of the pathomechanics of what viruses do. They love sugar.
Yeah, and yesterday's Instagram post that I resent to you, it talked about getting into a state of autophagy through fasting at least 17 hours because what they proved during COVID was that folks that were in a state of autophagy and fasting didn't get affected by the virus because the virus would come into the host and there was no food for them. And that's the glucose.
That's what I've been saying.
You've been saying it for
Take the food away from any organism, whether it's virus, the spirochete, it's cancer for sure. This is what these organisms want. They want sugar. No different than us. We love sugar,
Yes.
but it's a poison.
Yes.
Anything more than 4 grams at any one time, that's 1 teaspoon.
Well, so what you're saying is you were 20 years ahead of your time. Even your book that came out, it's an Amazon bestseller, by the way, even today. And you're the top 2 book in that category in Amazon of sugar and glucose and health and diet. People are talking about, dieting and plant-based, diets and all this. And you're talking about protein, the urban carnivore diet. You have your new book coming out, Unglued, that will be unveiling through 10 cities on a Sprinter van bus tour in June. So stay tuned on that. We're going to be talking about that on your show again and my show as well. That we're recording today in our podcast studios. Yours is Sugar Crush, mine's Capital Fit. We're really talking about what is your wealth without your health and educating people like people are doing on Instagram. I've learned so much in the last 2 years just following you, of course, and all the recordings that we've done on podcast and all the conversations we've had in the evening over dinner. And then I'm seeing all these people come out and talk about what you've been talking about for 20, 30 years.
I know it's getting boring to me, but I've been talking for so long. But Capital Fit, money, and cholesterol. There you go. That's the answer. The red herring. What is a red herring?
It's the cholesterol is bad. LDL, as you learn, if you just pull up any Instagram post, LDL is what the brain wants.
Right.
It wants the bad cholesterol.
Right. Apple A, apple B. I mean, we will palate bodies. I can get very granular in this subject. But I think when my epiphany, I was with you about a year ago when I was writing Unglued, which was unnamed at that time, and one of those producers, we were talking about Netflix, and he said, "What's the definition of glucose?" And I went, "It's a sugar." No, what's the word mean? That was an epiphany. So I had to look it up, which is part of this red herring thing. Glucose is a Greek word. It means to adhere, to stick together. It's glue. Oh my God, it's unglued.
Yes.
So the book is unglued. How do you get unglued? So let's go directly to cholesterol. Where did that word come from? Early 1800s. Actually went back to Boyle. Remember Boyle's law? He was even talking about it. So they did a deep dive on cholesterol over the years. Chole means bile in Latin, and stauros is solid bile. That's what it means. And the OL on the end of it means it's alcohol. Cholesterol is an alcohol fat. Very interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think if we're going to talk about anything, we got to define the word.
And you talk about this on your podcast, on your live feeds you've done, on all the video series you've done, and people have seen that. You've been educating them through your video series. So you're getting the word out, and
But no one seems to understand what I'm saying. So let's go back with this cholesterol word. And Anna Chovas, he was a Russian physicist, basically, and he came up with the concept that cholesterol was causing clogging of the arteries. And then Vercal came along after him, and he named that atherosclerosis, another Greek word, athero meaning gunk, and sclerosis meaning hardened gunk in the artery. Now, how is that a diagnosis? That's an observation. I read the original paper that Vercal wrote in the 1860s, and he did make a comment about the inflammation. He did not know what the inflammation was. Now let's put those two words together. There are three words. Let's do cholesterol.
cholesterol.
Right? It's a fat, really a wax if you really want to get technical. It's floating around in the blood, and shout out.
And it's made by the liver.
Made by the liver.
And it makes what it needs.
Yeah, and been doing that for about 3.2 million years, as far as I know. And Lucy, by the way, this is her anniversary. We give a shout out to Lucy and Don Johansson, who discovered her in Ethiopia in 1974. She would be a little pissed about this. She's been blamed for this. No, she didn't have atherosclerosis because she evolved from a herbivore to a carnivore. Well, wait a minute. If she's a carnivore and didn't have atherosclerosis, what's causing it? Well, let's look at the word glucose. It's glue. So how do we stick a fat to a smooth surface? And I did learn this at Stanford with Dr. John Cook. Shout out to him, cardiologist, vascular biologist, John Cook. John, what is causing this? Well, we think sugar causes inflammation of the endothelium, the lining of the blood vessel. And cholesterol, a signaling molecule in the liver, responds to that injury and puts down plaque, atherosclerosis. So what is cause or is that effect? It's like saying cholesterol is the cause. No, that's like saying ambulances cause accidents. No, they respond to accidents.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to Pavlov and Anchovy. And who was their best friend, by the way, in Russia? Anybody hear about this on YouTube or Instagram? No, you have not heard this. Their best friend was Stalin. I think now we're going to put our tin hats on. He wanted to destroy the Western civilization with his communism. And he is the best friend of the originators of the lipid hypothesis, which is totally fraud, totally wrong. It is not. Sugar is causing all these cardiovascular diseases. I just spoke at the Congress of Interventional Cardiologists, and right here in downtown Scottsdale at the Camelback, beautiful place, by the way, and you've been there, and I hadn't been there in a while, and that was kind of fun, but there's a couple hundred cardiologists there, and I gave a lecture. I was the co-pilot. And they didn't know what I was going to say, and I didn't know what I was going to say either, but I thought, well, they're sophisticated practitioners in this field, so I can speak loosely, I think. Loosely? So I started with the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson, and the first ape, Lucy. Well, then I gave the biochemistry of all this sort of thing and the history. And then I finished with, I took a piece of meat in my kitchen, filet from AJ's, delicious, by the way. And I put butter in there. And I wasn't intending to do a film on it. But all of a sudden, I went, wait a minute. This meat was sliding around the pan. And it was beautiful, it smelled beautiful. So I stopped, went to AJ's again, got some sugar because I didn't have any in the house, brought it back, put it in the pan, cooked it, and lo and behold, exactly as I thought, the Maillard reaction, which is sugar plus a protein, causes it to adhere. And that's how you cause hardening of the arteries, cardiovascular disease, in my opinion, every neurologic disease you can think of, from autism to Alzheimer's. And that's all in my book, Sugar Crush. But in a new book, Unglued, because everybody's eaten the poison for so many years, they want to know how to get off of this stuff. Obviously, don't eat the poison. And statin drugs have been monetizing this disease for the last 40 years. And they're now over $1 trillion. They're robbing the treasury of the United States with a false narrative, the red herring. So we were talking about the red herring the other day. What's the meaning of that? It's a mystery technique to send somebody off on the wrong trail. England, early 1800s, the paupers, the poor in England, they were trying to get the game from the king and his hounds when they went on hunts. So they took red herring, they smoked it, and put it in different places so the dogs went to the wrong place. That's what's happened in the United States. That's why we're broke. And if we don't correct it, we're going to be dead broke. And to capital fit, you brought up Stanley Druckenmiller, who said within 10 years, if we continue on this path, we will be dead broke.
And so the message is clear. Joe Rogan, if you're listening, we'd love to be on your show. Adam Carolla. There's so many great podcasters out there that should hear this message.
They got to hear this.
So people can be quoting you, going back to the book, going, oh my gosh, 20 years of research, because Cook told you, if you have this theory, Rick, go prove it. You did. You told him it would take 15 years to write the book. You had it published in 2015. It's top 2 on Amazon. We're going to make Unglued #1. We're going to pre-sell that, be on a 10-city tour in Southern California, maybe head up to Northern, back to Colorado, back to Scottsdale. So stay tuned on that, everybody. I'm Rick's friend, tennis buddy, pickleball pal.
You did not play pickleball this morning. There was hundreds of people out there today.
Well, I was riding my big fat beach cruiser into a headwind and getting a good workout. Let me tell you.
Good for you. Well, we have a beautiful day, as we always do.
Yes.
And we always have a lot of fun. But we need to get this conversation out to the public because this is a serious problem.
Rick, thanks for doing everything you do.
Thank you.
All right.